Okay, good morning classmates and Sir Ray. So me and my partner will discuss about the contribution of John Howard to criminology by but before that we will talk first about his background.
Howard was born in North London, either in Hackney or Enfield. His father, also John, was a wealthy upholsterer at Smithfield Market in the city. His mother, Anne Petit, died when he was 5 years old, and described as a sickly child. He was sent to live at Cardington, Bedfordshire, some 50 miles from London, where his father owned property. His father, a strict disciplinarian with strong religious beliefs, sent the young John to school in Hertford and then to John Ames Dissenting Academy in Dunlop. Upon his return, he lived in lodgings in Stoke Newington, where he again became seriously ill. He was nursed back to health by his landlady Sarah Ludor, whom he then married despite her being 30 years older than he was. She died within 2 years and he distributed her merged belongings amongst her remaining family and poor neighbors.
John Howard set out for Portugal following the 1755 Lisbon earthquake, traveling on the Hanover, which was captured by French privateers. He was imprisoned in Brest for 6 days before being transferred to another prison on the French coast. He was later exchanged for a French officer held by the British, and he quickly traveled to the commissioners of sick wounded seamen in London to seek help on behalf of his fellow captives. It is widely believed that this personal experience generated Howard's interest in prisons.
Having returned from France, he settled again at Cardington, Bedfordshire, to live on a 200 estate which was formerly two farms, the larger of which he had inherited from his grandparents. His grandmother, Martha Howard, was a relation of the Whitebread family, and he became a neighbor of and close friends of his cousin Samuel Whitebread. He spent the next 2 years building properties and trying to improve the lives of the tenants living on his land. Later, a survey of Cardington in 1782 found that he was paying for the teaching of 23 children. He was selected a Fellow of the Royal Society in May 1756. In 1758, Howard married Henrietta Leeds, who died in 1765. A week after giving birth to a son, also named John, who was sent to boarding school at varying age. The younger John was sent down from Cambridge for homosexual offenses, was judged insane at the age of 21, and died in 1799, having spent 13 years an asylum.
In 1773, he was appointed High Sheriff of Bedfordshire, and supervision of the country jail became of one his responsibilities. He was shocked by the conditions he found there and visited others in England, where the situation was no better. Jailers were not salaried but lived off fees paid by prisoners for food, bedding, and other facilities. He took this issue to Parliament, and in 1774, Howard was called to give evidence on prison conditions to a House of Commons Select Committee. Members of that committee were so impressed that, unusually, Howard was called to the bar of the House of Commons and publicly thanked for his humanity and zeal. In 1777, he published The State of Prisons in England, describing his personal experience and findings about visiting several hundred prisons across England, Scotland, Wales, and wider Europe. It included very detailed accounts of the prisons he had visited, including plans and maps, together with the detailed instructions on the necessary improvements, especially regarding hygiene and cleanliness, the lack of which was causing many deaths. Howard's concerns led to two 1774 Parliamentary Acts. One abolished jailers' fees. The other enforced improvements in the system leading to better prisoner health. It is this work that has been credited as establishing the practice of single selling in the United Kingdom and, by extension, in the United States. In April 1777, Howard's sister died, leaving him $15,000 and her house. He used this inheritance and the revenue from the sale of her house to further his work in prisons. In 1778, he was again examined by the House of Commons, who were this time inquiring into hulks, or prison ships. 2 days after giving evidence, he was again traveling Europe, beginning in the Dutch Republic. By 1784, Howard calculated that he had traveled over 42,000 miles, visiting prisons. He had been awarded an honorary LL.D. by the University of Dublin and had been given the freedom of the City of London. His fourth and final tour of English prisons began in March 1787, and 2 years later, he published The State of the Prisons in England and an account of the principal lazarettos of Europe. His final journey took him into Eastern Europe and into Crimea. Whilst at Kherson, Howard contracted typhus on a prison visit and died, age 63. He was buried in the walled field at Dovinovka, Ukraine. Despite requesting a quiet funeral without pomp and ceremony, the event was elaborated and attended by the Prince of Moldavia. When news of his death reached England in February 1790, a commemorative series of John Howard halfpenny Condor tokens were struck, including one that circulated in Bath, on the reverse showing "Go forth and remember the debtors" in Gaul.